Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and this is the Charnel House Trilogy. It's $4.79, 20% off during its promotional period, and this is a review of this game. I've played through the entire one, so instead of a first impressions, you're going to get an entire review on this game. Now, keep in mind before I begin that this is done via a developer key obtained from the PR firm that reached out for them in exchange for some coverage on the game, so keep that in mind. I played through all 3 chapters, and my overall experience is the fact that it's not for me. There's too many issues in terms of storytelling here that I really think weaken the overall narrative. While it has some good parts and some symbolism and some cool themes that it plays with, unfortunately the execution of those themes fell short at times, and in particular certain sections in which this point-and-click adventure just did not live up to expectations, and not only expectations, but just hitting a consistent tone. And I think that's where the game really suffered. So keep that in mind as I go into it. Now, the characters that you will play in this game, there are 2 main ones, Alex and Harold. You'll play Alex in the first and third chapters of the game, and Harold in the second. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Harold, because he honestly felt a little bit off in terms of why you were playing him. In terms of the overall story arc, it felt like Alex was a lot more, you know, developed in terms of the story element. I don't know why Harold was there. I'll go into that a little bit later, but it just felt off to me, and I felt broken, to be honest with you. Now, Alex is about 20-something-year-old lady living in her own apartment. She's gotten over a little bit of a breakup for a couple of years, and she finally decides to go to this place called Auger Peak. There's a train that's leaving there. It's during the night. It's a little bit out of the ordinary in terms of scheduling. And she and Harold get on this train, and events happen because of that. Now, I'm not going to go into the plot entirely on this one because, again, with a game like this, plot is so important, and I don't really want to spoil anything. I'll just hit the main portions of where I think the overall themes and characters are going to go into. So, now, one of the things I did notice about the game is that some famous people, and I'm using quotes there, make a little bit of an appearance in terms of voice acting for the game. Jim Sterling and Peter Wellington are 2 that come to mind. Jim Sterling in particular, because he's got that sort of unique voice, at least in my opinion. Now, there is some reasonable voice acting here. Now, given the budget and experience of the game, I mean, it's a very cheap game. It's very, you know, sort of, it has that indie feel to it. It's good. It's not great. I do believe that there's some little bit of strangeness, like Jim added a little bit of a southern drawl to this person that I didn't think needed to be there. But overall, it was done pretty well. The thing, though, is that the reason why the voice acting doesn't really stand out, in my opinion, is more so the writing more than anything else. The writing is sort of inconsistent, and really it's hard to get the emotion out of at times. Now, there are some emotional moments in the game, don't get me wrong. There are some tense moments and some horrifying moments, but it's the execution of those portions, like, it didn't really build up context to it that really made it suffer. Now, again, they did what they needed to do, and the art style and sort of the voice acting work well. The pixel art feels like an old point-and-click adventure game, which is what it was going for, and felt rather nice. It did remind me a tiny bit of Fist of Awesome in a way, which was weird, but I haven't played a lot of point-and-click adventure games, and I think it's something like, you know, Indiana Jones or some of those old games definitely would appeal to me, like this one may have appealed to me when I started playing it. Now, the main problem with the characters, in my opinion, and the plot is the inconsistent execution of those characters and keeping to that character's strengths and sort of a consistent tone. Characters will go through odd shifts of personality, and while you can expect that sometimes in a horror-like element, it needs to be introduced with that horror-like element or naturally. The problem in this game, and I'm going to go with one example here because I think it really shows exactly where I have a problem with, is Harold. Harold is a sort of mild-mannered person. He's a professor of sorts. He's, you know, sort of typical, and you find out that, you know, he has, you know, maybe an alcohol problem by the fact that he has one drink, and then all of a sudden gets really, really angry that he doesn't get a second one. And I don't know about anybody else, but the way that they built up to that point, it felt really off. Like I felt like there was supposed to be another scene or two with them talking in between, like sort of ramping up there. And the thing was that it felt rushed. It felt like they needed to get the story element, this alcoholism portion of his character into it. And unfortunately, it fell apart because it's like, wait a minute, where did this come from? He's all of a sudden gone from 0 to 60 in terms of anger. I don't get that, and especially with, you know, some of the signs of alcoholism and things like that, it just felt flat. It felt like this character didn't have that trait to him, and so that's where I'm talking about, where the story's execution of the writing and the character and characterization just didn't work with me. It felt like I didn't exactly read or listen to what was actually trying to be portrayed, and that's a major problem there. Again, it felt like not only in that part, but other parts that there were cuts in terms of like portions cut out that should have been there. Like there should be more build up, more understanding of some of the nature of the elements that were going into this story. It's things that I should have known that maybe it was explained at one point, but now it's not. Unfortunately, it really fails on that level in my opinion. Now, don't get me wrong, there is one sort of saving grace to the story, and that is its overall themes. The overall themes come together pretty well, in particular the symbolism in which they portray some of the more supernatural elements is pretty well done, but the symbolism of everything that they react to and the items and everything that's around those items does do well. I felt like that part was definitely fleshed out a lot better, and especially with some of the allegories to some basic portions of the human condition and the human experience. I know that's going to sound a little weird. Again, I'm trying not to spoil anything on the plot, but the themes are done well, and it's sewn together well in terms of the 3 chapters. What I did like was the fact that the chapters seemingly supported each other. They weren't 3 separate experiences, even though the Herald part still seemed a little bit off in the end. They all seem to, you know, tie to each other rather well, and I did enjoy that portion of it. And it can be legitimately creepy. There are some elements where, you know, it is off-putting. It's not scary. It's off-putting, and I think it makes you uncomfortable, and it makes you really uncomfortable at a certain point. That certain point made me uncomfortable because it was sort of shocking in the way that it came out. I'm not exactly sure if that was intended, or again, there was portions that were cut off in terms of what happened up to that point. But nevertheless, it did do its job in sort of making me feel at unease at that point. But overall, the problem, again, I'm having is that I expected consistency. I expected a little bit better storytelling and a little bit more consistent storytelling. Now, there are strengths of this game. I mean, the characters, in terms of the voice acting, for what it is, the voice acting did pretty well given the budget and given the experience of the people involved, as well as the overall story arc in terms of the symbolism. But in the end, there was too many shifts within this narrative that caused me to not believe it. And not only not believe it, not enjoy it either. I felt I was asking more questions that weren't getting answered. It didn't help that it ended on a point where they're obviously going to be making another game in 2016. They allude to that. And it just felt like too many questions were left unanswered for that purpose, to sort of draw the attention to that game and maybe a bigger project. And unfortunately, I just did not, I'm not interested enough to really understand what's going on. The ending leaves a lot of stuff open, and while it does answer some questions, you're sort of asking more questions rather than getting more answers. And while that can be good for some cases, here I felt like you didn't have enough information to begin with, and so to leave on even more information being necessary, it just didn't feel well to me. If you like horror, and you like sort of horror elements that sort of get more into the psychology of things, then this game may be for you, but you are going to have a bumpy road while doing it, and unfortunately on that aspect of it, you're going to have a real bumpy road. But if you do like horror, and you do like psychological horror and are willing to put up with that, this game may be for you. It wasn't for me, unfortunately. There's just too many inconsistencies, like I said before. And overall, I'm glad I reviewed it, I guess. But on the other hand, I think I would have rather played something else at this point, rather like a different horror experience. All right, this is Dragnix signing out. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Again, take in mind that this is only one person's opinion. Go get some more opinions. I know that Georgina from Tech Raptor, somebody I work with over in Tech Raptor, also did a review on that, so go read her review at this point. Yes, shilling, blah, blah, blah. I will see you all later. Hey, thanks for watching. If you have a chance, leave some feedback and comments below. If you liked the video, hit that like button. And if you want more content like this, hit that subscribe button. This is Dragnix signing off, hoping that gaming brings as much fun to you as it does for me.